Black CEO kicked out of first class. Minutes later, entire airline faces. Unforeseen. Consequences. I'm going to tell you the story of Jonah Reed, a black CEO forced out of his first-class seat by prejudice. Yet, in just 45 minutes, he compelled an entire airline to overhaul its policies, fire the discriminators, and spark the Fly Fair movement that changed the industry. If this story moves you, please like, subscribe, and share so the voice of justice can travel further. Jonah Reed boarded Skyjet 180, looking unassuming in a gray hoodie, faded jeans, and sneakers worn through 100 work trips. He slipped his slim briefcase into the overhead, settled into seat 1A in first class, fastened his belt, and pulled out his phone to skim a few emails before takeoff. He'd barely read the third subject line when a blue uniformed figure stopped beside him, led flight attendant Claire Holt Hare in a tight bun iPad clutched to her chest. "Sir, this cabin is reserved for first-class passengers," she said, voice, firm eyes flicking over his decidedly unspectacular clothes. Jonah looked up, staying calm. "I'm aware. Here are my ticket and ID." He held up the boarding pass on his screen QR code, large, clearly marked Seat 1A, First Class. Claire glanced, tapped her tablet, frowned. "The system shows you in 23C. Phones clicked around the cabin. A young couple nearby exchanged glances and quietly started recording. Jonah spoke evenly. "You might want to sync your data again. I bought this seat 3 weeks ago." He handed over his shimmering platinum card. Claire merely skimmed it and shook her head. "These fakes are everywhere online. Please move to your correct seat before we have to call security." A silver-haired man in row 2A leaned over in a paternal tone. "Son, no need to make a scene, flights are packed." Jonah replied curtly, "I'm not looking for trouble, just the service I paid for." He tapped the voice record button, phone resting on his thigh. 1602, Skyjet Flight 180. I'm being told to leave my purchased seat. Meanwhile, a jet watcher in 4B went live. "Folks, a black CEO's getting booted from first class right now. Viewer count jumped from 20 to 300 in seconds." Claire caught sight of the cameras, her face reddening, but her voice turning colder. "You're delaying departure. Final warning. 23C or deplane." Jonah didn't budge, simply enlarged the ticket display, name and seat glowing. Claire radioed Captain Disruptive Passenger in the forward cabin. Less than a minute later, Captain Mason Cole appeared, gold watch glinting under the lights. Without even glancing at the pass, he declared, "You'll exit the aircraft now. We don't tolerate upgrade scams." Murmurs rippled. 4 more phones shot up to capture every angle. Jonah looked straight at Mason, raising his voice just enough for the cabin to hear. "I'll cooperate, but everyone here should note, you haven't verified anything." He stood, grabbed his briefcase, and stepped into the aisle, silently, counting the seconds the flight was now late. As Jonah left the jet bridge monitor, flipped to delayed 18 minutes. Jet watchers stream, blasted Jirier Skyjet bias climbing fast. Comments poured in. Still happening in 2025. Get the attendant's face. A middle-aged traveler whispered to her partner, "This'll hit the news." Jonah glanced back and met Claire's unwavering, dismissive stare. He paused. His recording opened a new note, voice ID evidence, Claire Holt. And he knew the real fight had just begun. The real fight had only just begun. Barely a dozen steps from the jet bridge, Jonah found himself ringed by lenses, phones aloft, red RE dots glowing. Delay chimes kept pinging overhead, turning Gate A12 into an impromptu arena. 2 airport security officers, 1 man, 1 woman, approached. The man introduced himself briskly. "Officer Ramos, we need to verify your ticket, sir." Jonah offered phone and ID with a polite nod, making sure a jet watcher's camera caught every second. Ramos compared documents, eyebrows knitting. Ticket clearly shows 1A first class. Claire, now breathless from the short sprint, cut in. "Fake pass." The system already said so. Ramos didn't argue. He quietly radioed for a supervisor. Through the crowd came Tracy Miller, the concourse supervisor, strides quick, yet determined to project authority. "Status?" she asked, tone-clipped. Ramos summarized, handing over the boarding pass and platinum card. Claire leaned in to whisper, "He probably hacked the QR code." Tracy flicked her gaze to Jonah hoodie sneakers, but the calm in his eyes made her pause. "Mr. Reed, my system shows an economy purchase. 2 options: move to 23C or take the next flight." A muted gasp rippled outward. Livestream chat exploded. "They haven't verified anything." Jonah kept his voice steady. "I've cooperated at every turn. This is your error. Before deciding, please refresh your database one more time." Tracy tried data unchanged. "I'm sorry, sir. You'll need to step to the counter." He agreed, shouldering his briefcase, logging timestamps in his notes as they walked. Skyjet stock began to wobble. A passenger with a smartwatch murmured, "Price is dipping." Skyjet bias shot into Twitter's top 3. At the counter, Jonah slipped a business card forward. White stock, embossed letters, Jonah M. Reed, Chairman, Reed Ventures. Tracy froze eyes, sliding to the line below equity stakeholder. Skyjet Airlines, 26%. Color drained from her face. A tech-savvy traveler Googled the name and thrust the screen overhead headlines confirming Reed Ventures' recent 26% acquisition. The crowd erupted. Livestream notifications screamed plot twist. Shares dropped another 0.3 of a point. Tracy inhaled. "You're a major shareholder." Jonah nodded. "And a fully paid passenger." Claire's grip whitened on her iPad. Jonah addressed every camera in view. "You're all witnesses. This incident triggers a material event clause in the shareholder agreement." Phones lifted higher. Ramos whispered into his radio. Within 30 seconds, the monitor by the gate blazed red: emergency board call. Skyjet HQ. The PA crackled: Supervisor Miller, priority call from the CEO. Tracy's hand trembled as she answered. Felix Ward's voice boomed loud enough for nearby mics. "What's happening at A12 stock is tanking." "It's a misunderstanding with Mr. Reed," she stammered. "Mr. Reed, the chairman of Reed Ventures." Jonah leaned slightly toward the handset. "Hello, Felix. Your staff just denied my purchased seat because they feel my appearance doesn't fit first class." Silence thickened the air. Felix exhaled audibly. "Connect the board now." "Jonah, please stay at the gate. I'm resolving this immediately." Jonah rested the receiver, turning to Tracy. "I'll wait." Livestream chat scrolled wild: CEO on the line, movie time. The crowd fell into hushed anticipation as Tracy accepted a Zoom link. 8 directors filled the screen next to a bright red stock chart. Jonah stepped into frame, adjusted his camera voice, iron steady. "Ladies and gentlemen, in the last 20 minutes I've witnessed blatant discrimination. Before we discuss remedies, remember we're not just losing money, we're losing trust." An elderly director squinted. "What do you want?" Jonah opened his briefcase, lifting a thick report. Page 1, 132. Discrimination complaints last year, 40% above the industry mean. He closed it. "I want Skyjet to correct course inside 72 hours, or Reed Ventures divests and advises partner funds to do the same." At the gate, Claire stood, rigid face ashen. Tracy avoided his gaze. Passengers held their breath. In the Zoom grid, Felix Ward bowed his head. "We're listening, Mr. Reed." Jonah drew a measured breath, ready to outline 5 demands. Off-screen, our jet watcher zoomed tighter. Live viewership soared past 12,000. The battle was no longer Jonah's alone. It had become a public tribunal, and with every ticking second the pressure on Skyjet only intensified. Jonah held the room, both real and virtual, like a conductor raising his baton. Phones quivered in waiting hands. The Zoom tiles of Skyjet's directors seemed to lean in. "Here are my non-negotiables." He began each word crisp enough to cut steel. First, the immediate dismissal of every employee who escalated this incident without verifying the facts. That includes lead attendant Claire Holt and Captain Mason Cole. 24 hours. A low murmur rippled through gate A12. Claire's lips parted, as if to protest, but no sound emerged. Mason, tuned in from the cockpit, went rigid. Second, comprehensive bias training for all customer-facing staff, designed and delivered within 30 days by a third-party specialist. He paused to let the timeline sink in. Third, a secure anonymous reporting system for discrimination, fully operational in 72 hours. Outsourced, no internal gatekeeping. Fourth, the Fly Fair Fund, $500,000 earmarked for diversity and inclusion initiatives audited annually. Director Montoya rubbed his temples. That's substantial. Not compared to the lawsuits you're courting, Jonah replied. Fifth, and most critical, Skyjet must issue a public apology, acknowledging systemic failure, and link 20% of executive bonuses to measurable equity metrics. Transparency reports released every quarter. Silence broken only by boarding announcements for flights far less dramatic than this one. Viewers on Odd Jetwatcher's stream spammed emojis, rockets fire scales of justice. The ticker in the corner showed 18,000 live eyes. CEO Felix Ward cleared his throat. Our labor agreements may complicate immediate terminations. Felix Jonah cut in when weather shuts down a hub. Skyjet rewrites its whole schedule in 6 hours. Complexity is an excuse, not a barrier. The remark hung there, daring contradiction. None came. Instead, legal counsel Patel whispered into Felix's ear. The CEO's shoulders sagged. We accept your terms in principle, he said, enunciating each syllable like swallowing glass. But we need a feasible rollout plan. You'll get one, Jonah answered. I'll send you a template before this gate empties. A scattered applause broke out, first a single passenger, then clusters. Phones lifted higher, catching Claire retreating 2 steps, as though applause itself drove her back. Mason's voice leaked from the comm operations, is asking if we should start reboarding. The question dissolved under the weight of a fresh alert Skyjet stock, down another 0.4%. Jonah leaned closer to Tracy's microphone, addressing the live stream, the board, and anyone in earshot. This is no victory lap. Hundreds of passengers every year get shamed off flights with no camera to save them. Today, accountability showed up wearing hoodies and holding Wi-Fi. A second later, Officer Ramos's radio crackled. Dispatch confirmed VIP security escort available. Ramos glanced at Jonah, respect replacing skepticism, and nodded. Director Chen, no relation, finally spoke from the Zoom grid. If we meet your deadlines, will Reed Ventures maintain its position? We will, Jonah said, and we'll increase annual spend by 15%, provided quarterly audits show tangible progress. That carrot landed harder than any stick. Felix seized it. Board consensus. Heads nodded like dominoes. Motion carried, he declared. Gate A12 erupted in cheers. Somewhere beyond the circle of phones, a child asked Mom what's systemic failure, and the mother whispered an explanation Jonah couldn't hear, but hoped was accurate. He turned to Claire one last time. You still have a future in this industry, if you choose to learn from today. Her face flickered through denial, anger, and finally, embarrassed comprehension. Jonah pulled his laptop from the briefcase, opened a template contract he'd drafted months ago after a different incident went unrecorded, and emailed it to Felix with the subject line, 72-hour action plan. Sent. Ping. The PA crackled again. Attention passengers on Skyjet Flight 180. We will begin reboarding shortly with a new flight crew. Gasps, then applause louder than before. Jonah exhaled, shoulders easing for the first time that hour. Officer Ramos gestured toward the jet bridge. Mr. Reed, whenever you're ready. He tilted his phone, letting the live stream see his smile, not triumphant, simply resolute. To everyone watching, he said, keep your cameras ready and your documents organized. Institutions change fastest when stories come with evidence. He ended the stream, tucked the phone away, and strode toward the aircraft. Behind him, the board remained on screen, already dissecting logistics. Ahead, a replacement crew waited with careful, measured smiles. As Jonah crossed the threshold back into the cabin, his watch vibrated. Skyjet shares stabilizing, early analysts predicting a rebound on swift corrective measures. He slid once more into seat 1A. Different attendant, same uniform, gentler tone. Welcome back, Mr. Reed. Anything we can bring you? He glanced down the aisle, economy passengers still boarding, some nodding in quiet solidarity, then looked up. Yes, he said. Just keep the promises we made out there. The attendant nodded, whisked away his empty glass, and disappeared up the aisle. Jonah let the leather headrest cradle him, while he opened his laptop again. 39,000 feet felt like the only stable ground right now. Within minutes, an encrypted message arrived from Felix Ward. Action plan acknowledged. HR already drafting termination letters. Legal approves anonymous reporting vendor. Keep you posted. A timestamp showed it was sent before the plane even left the gate. Seatbelt sign-off murmurs filled the restored calm of first class. A woman across the aisle leaned over the divider. Mr. Reed. Thank you, she whispered, voice trembling with the adrenaline of borrowed courage. Jonah offered a small nod. Her teenage son in economy would board future flights, knowing someone had pried the door wider. Mid-cabin Wi-Fi pinged nonstop. Jetwatcher, still streaming from 24A, narrated every new headline. Skyjet says yes to 72-hour overhaul. Shareholder power or public shame. #FlyFair sprouted even before Skyjet's PR team could register the domain. 2 hours in Jonah's notification tray flashed again, a forwarded memo marked Urgent, Confidential. Subject: Personnel Actions. Body effective immediately. Claire Holt and Captain Mason Cole are relieved of all duties pending exit processing. Supervisor Tracy Miller reassigned to training support. Digital signatures from HR operations and legal sat side by side like freshly inked verdicts. Jonah exhaled, half relief, half gravity. The machine was moving. He spent the rest of the flight tweaking the bias training outline, 8 interactive modules, scenario videos, a final assessment scored by machine intelligence, every completion logged to the new vendor's server. The anonymous reporting portal would feed straight to an external ombudsman firm, no more complaints vanishing into private inboxes. When wheels kissed Chicago tarmac, the cabin erupted in a ripple of applause, unexpected organic brief. Jonah's phone buzzed with a calendar update. FlyFair Fund kickoff call, 0800 tomorrow. Under it, another notification. Skyjet stock stabilizes, analysts cite swift remedial action. Inside O'Hare's quiet jet bridge, a junior Skyjet rep waited with a clipboard, and nerves betraying youth. Mr. Reed Corporate asked me to escort you to a private lounge while they arrange transport. CEO Ward will join by video in 20. Jonah smiled politely. A chair and decent coffee will do. And tell Felix I only need 10. 10 hours later, 03:14 a.m. company time, Felix Ward was still awake in his corner office. Live dashboards glowed across an entire wall, share price, flatlining a victory, social media sentiment inching from red to amber. First 5 resumes of third-party trainers already submitted. On a smaller monitor, Jonah's face was boxed in video chat. Ward looked exhausted, but committed. Termination letters delivered. Crew scheduling already patched the roster. Your training module's brilliant, by the way. We'll batch deploy at SO 6 Yo 0. Good, Jonah said. What about the portal vendor link test screen? URL goes public at noon. We added a QR code to every boarding pass starting next cycle. Jonah's lips curved, first hint of genuine satisfaction all day. Then we're on schedule. I'll expect the full progress sheet by tomorrow night. Felix managed a weary grin. Copy that. And thanks for not torching the house, Jonah. I don't need ashes, Felix, he replied. I need proof that walls can be rebuilt right. Call ended. 71 hours after Gate A12, a press conference streamed from Skyjet headquarters. Felix Ward stood behind a lectern, emblazoned with a hastily designed FlyFair logo. To his left, the ombudsman firm's lead partner. To his right, 2 board directors, who had once argued the word equity belonged only in finance. Felix spoke first, voice. Even we failed Mr. Jonah Reed and countless travelers without his platform. Today, we announce structural corrections, effective, measurable, and overseen in public view. He listed them: live training rollout completion rate already at 43%. Anonymous portal receiving its first valid submission inside 45 minutes of launch. The FlyFair Fund seated at $500,000 donations open for industry partners. Reporters peppered him with obligatory skepticism, timeframes, union resistance, legal exposure. Felix answered each with detailed timelines Jonah had drafted, owning the cost, framing it as investment. When the questions pivoted to Jonah himself, Ward gestured to a large monitor. Jonah appeared from his Chicago office, the skyline morning blue behind him. "I didn't ask for applause," Jonah began. "I asked for accountability. Skyjet's leadership has taken the first steps. The next test is consistency." He paused, meeting the camera like it was a single, expectant face. "If you're a passenger who's ever felt erased, document it. If you work inside a system that tilts, report it." Stories backed by data force change faster than outrage alone. The live feed cut to a collage of employees across 7 airports completing Module 1 of the bias course: practical, uncomfortable, necessary. Social media erupted again, but with a different tone: curiosity mixed with cautious optimism. Among the hashtags, a new one surfaced: Joshua promises kept. Back in his office, Jonah closed the stream and finally allowed himself a long breath. 3 days ago, a hoodie and a boarding pass had seemed like flimsy armor. Tonight, they felt like the uniform of a movement. By dawn, that uniform of a movement already had recruits. While Chicago's skyline traded night blue for pewter morning, Jonah's inbox filled with screenshots, ramp agents wearing QR code badges for the new reporting portal call center staff, posting Module 3 completion certificates, a junior pilot sharing a selfie captioned, "First flight after FlyFair. Let's honor it." He replied to every message 2 words at a time: "Keep going until coffee ran dry." Day 4 brought metrics 6,411. Employees had finished at least one bias training segment. 187 complaints entered the portal, most small, uneven tone, careless jokes, but 11 serious enough for immediate inquiry. The ombudsman flagged 2 repeat offenders. HR suspended them before lunchtime. Felix forwarded the action log with a single line, moving faster than storms. Jonah allowed himself a brief smile. Speed had always been Skyjet's brag, now redirected inward. Week 2. The data looked stranger: customer satisfaction scores climbing in markets that hadn't seen a fare sale in months. Analysts scratched heads on CNBC. Jonah understood. Respect like legroom didn't require coupons, just space to exist. He drafted a memo titled "Dignity as Revenue" and sent it to Felix, who replied with 3 rocket emojis and a "yes, let's" present to the board meeting invite. Claire Holt's name resurfaced in week 3 this time. In a LinkedIn update, Jonah's feed surfaced former flight attendant, pivoting to DEI consulting. Lessons learned at $30,000 FT. The post radiated contrition without self-pity. Commenters split between cynics and supporters. Jonah typed, deleted, retyped, then settled on "growth takes altitude. Good luck." He hit send, felt lighter. At the 30-day mark, external auditors delivered the first compliance dashboard by encrypted link: 87% module completion median quiz, score 92, complaint response time averaging 10 hours. The board reviewed it in a session that lasted half the scheduled slot. No one wanted to be the director who slowed momentum. Executive comp KPIs were locked. HR circulated an animated slide of bonus bars tied to red-green equity gauges. Someone leaked it. Social media turned the GIF into a meme: "Get woke" or "Get broke," equal parts joke and warning. Momentum spilled beyond airport fences. Grayline Bus Corp DM'd Jonah's foundation for license rights to the training modules. Within 48 hours, Amtrak called too. Jonah drafted a templated agreement: fees funneled straight into the FlyFair Fund. The fund crossed $720,000 by week 6. But progress demanded fuel stories. So Jonah recorded a 5-minute video blazer over hoodie script, trimmed of jargon, inviting passengers to submit their experiences. He expected polite engagement. He received a title inbox: One submission stopped him cold. A college senior named Angela described being forced to check her violin, a family heirloom, while white passengers kept theirs on board. The portal had already flagged the attendant. Corrective coaching scheduled. Jonah wrote back personally. Closing with your story changes more than one seat. She replied within minutes. Then, I'll keep telling it. Quarter end arrived. Skyjet's earnings call opened with Felix citing an 18% drop in legal liability reserves and the highest NPS in 6 years. Analysts asked whether Flyfair was marketing spin. Felix answered spin doesn't reduce claims or raise scores. Shares ticked up 3% during Q&A. That night, Jonah walked Lakeshore Drive thinking of trajectories, and airlines a movements his own. He checked the portal once more. Complaint number 8112 logged, but response time now under 6 hours. He tapped the screen like a barometer. Weather looked promising. Just before midnight, his phone buzzed again. Department of Transportation request Chairman Reed, available for advisory panel on forthcoming passenger equity standards. He accepted with a single word, absolutely. Then, he slipped the phone into his pocket and faced the lake's dark expanse. Systems could shift, he thought, because data told a story, and stories, when documented, refused to stay seated in the back. Tomorrow, the real work would continue drafting federal guidelines, refining training, shepherding culture past the burst of headlines. But tonight, Jonah let the wind off the water fill his lungs, the uniform of a movement settling comfortably on his shoulders, stitched now with thousands of unseen hands. The next morning, the wind off Lake Michigan still clung to Jonah's jacket as he walked into a glass-walled conference room at the Department of Transportation. No skyline today, just a federal seal on parchment, and a long table ringed by 15 officials. They wanted a blueprint. He carried a USB drive labeled Flyfair Federal Draft. Acting Secretary Maria Alcott opened. Mr. Reed, we're considering nationwide passenger equity standards. Show us the levers that actually move. Jonah plugged in the drive. Slide 1 Skyjet complaint curve, plunging 58% in 8 weeks. Slide 2 cost savings from reduced legal actions, $12.4 million annualized. Heads tilted, numbers translated faster than rhetoric ever could. He finished in 15 minutes. Alcott nodded once. Submit the language for public comment. We'll fast track. News broke before he reached the elevator. DOT taps Flyfair as model for airline reforms. Hashtag Your Fair Skies shot up beside Your Promises Kept. By lunch, 5 competing carriers had emailed his foundation asking for early access to the modules. He sent them the same templated agreement. Use it free, but publish your metrics quarterly and pay a licensing fee straight into the Flyfair fund. By sundown, the fund passed $1 million. Week 9 brought turbulence from an unexpected quarter. The Pilots Association accused Skyjet of disciplinary overreach. Felix forwarded the grievance to Jonah with the subject storm clouds. Jonah answered with one line, invite them to design Module 5 bias in the cockpit. 2 days later, the union's safety chair recorded the voiceover himself, calling it another layer of situational awareness. The grievance evaporated. Quarter 2 closed with Skyjet's Net Promoter Score topping 50 for the first time in company history. An analyst tweeted, turns out dignity is scalable. Shares climbed another 6%. Felix celebrated by scrapping the old mission statement and replacing it with 3 words, every seat dignified. Jonah wrote the board a brief congratulation, then returned to the portal queue. Progress was not self-maintaining. Summer brought copycats. Grayline launched Busfare Amtrak, unveiled Rail Respect, and 3 hotel chains adopted the anonymous portal almost verbatim. Each sent royalties to the Flyfair Fund. Accountants projected $2 million by year-end. Claire Holt, now a junior consultant at a mid-size HR firm, published a white paper titled From Discrimination to Design Thinking. Jonah read it on a flight to D.C. Concise, data-rich, no excuses. He added a margin note, invite to next panel, and forwarded it to Alcott. In October, The DOT released the proposed passenger equity rules for 30-day comment. Lobbyists grumbled, but public sentiment flooded the docket, $47,000 signatures, many linking to Jonah's 5-minute video. The final text mandated public reporting of discrimination data, third-party review of severe incidents, and executive compensation ties mirroring Skyjet's. Compliance window 12 months. Airlines called it aggressive. Passengers called it overdue. The night the rules cleared the Federal Register, Jonah sat in his office watching a live map of U.S. air traffic. Each blinking plane now carried a link on its boarding pass to an accountability portal. Tiny pixels, huge implication. His phone lit message from Angela the violinist. "Tonight, I flew Jet West. They asked if the cabin had room before touching my case and apologized for last time." Jonah replied, "That's the sound of systems changing tune." She answered with a treble clef emoji. Winter audits showed complaint resolution times under 4 hours at Skyjet, 8 to 12 elsewhere. Felix sent the chart with a caption margin of leadership. Jonah circled the lagging airlines and wrote, "Share the tech stack, forward progress, competitive edge." Felix agreed. Reputation now traded higher than exclusivity. On New Year's Eve, Jonah walked the same stretch of Lakeshore Drive, where the movement's uniform first settled on his shoulders. Fireworks cracked over Navy Pier. His phone buzzed. Secretary Alcott press conference set for March. "Want to stand beside us when the rules take effect?" He typed, "Wouldn't miss it." Lake Wind whipped his coat, but couldn't loosen the stitching of those unseen hands. 2 years ago, a hoodie in Seat 1A had been enough to halt a plane. Next spring, it would help launch a federal standard. Jonah turned toward the city lights, already imagining the next slide deck, this time with an industry-wide graph that bent unmistakably toward respect. Jonah kept the imagined slide deck in his head for months, refining it on red-eye flights and in half-lit hotel lobbies. By the time March arrived, that vision had crystallized into a single, sweeping curve: airline discrimination complaints plunging 71% across an entire industry. He carried the graphic printed large on foam board through security at the National Civil Rights Museum in Memphis, where a transport equity summit had outgrown every ballroom and landed in the auditorium beneath banners of past movements. Reporters thronged the lobby mics, aimed like weather vanes hunting the next gust of headline. But inside the hall felt hushed, expectant 800 seats, filling with airline CEOs, union reps, DOT officials, activists, and travelers who had once been anonymous in coach. Jonah took the podium in his habitual blazer over hoodie. Stage lights glinted off the tiny QR code pin on his lapel, linking to the FlyFare portal that had become industry norm. He began without flourish. 2 years ago, this story started in row 1A. It was never about a seat. It was about the altitude of dignity. He clicked to the slide, the steep, downward arc of complaints. Audible gasps rippled. No one could misread that trajectory. "What you're seeing," he continued, "is the power of documentation plus leverage. Cameras recorded data, accumulated incentives aligned, and a system shifted." Mid-row Secretary Maria Alcott nodded. She'd fought to turn that data into federal code. Next to her sat Claire Holt, the once maligned flight attendant, now sporting a consultant badge. When Jonah invited questions, she rose first, voice steady but soft. "Mr. Reed, I was the person who started that descent curve on the wrong axis. I want to ask, how do we ensure frontline staff never again become that trigger cameras zoomed?" The moment could have been retribution. Jonah made it restoration. "By giving them the same tools we gave executives," he answered. "Real-time data, clear accountability, and a culture that rewards correction over concealment." Applause followed, tentative, then growing an industry acknowledging its past without flinching. During lunch break, Jonah stepped outside to the courtyard, where drummers rehearsed for the evening's memorial. Angela Thompson intercepted him, violin case slung over her shoulder, press badge dangling. "You know they're calling it the Thompson Clause. Now she said, referring to the line in the federal rules requiring carriers to accommodate fragile instruments or compensate at triple cost. Her smile was equal parts pride and disbelief. My story is literally regulation. Stories become statutes when you refuse to file them away. Jonah replied, remembering her late-night email. She tapped the violin case. Mind if I play? Before the closing remarks, he promised her a slot. The afternoon panel turned practical union leaders outlining peer review grievance boards, data scientists demoing bias heat maps for airports, Gray Line bus showing how their portal cut incident resolution time to under 3 hours. When the moderator asked what came next, Jonah unveiled a new initiative. Share the Stack, an open-source repository of FlyFare's code templates and auditing tools. Progress shouldn't gatekeep, he said. We win faster when no airline can claim ignorance. Evening settled. The drummer's cadence ushered everyone back inside. Angela stood alone under a spotlight, drawing her bow across the strings. The melody, slow resilient, filled the hall where Freedom Riders' photos lined the walls. When the final note faded, Jonah returned to the podium for closing. Change doesn't finish, he said. It rechecks itself like a pilot reading instruments every minute. He cited fresh numbers: portal response time at Skyjet, now 3 hours, industry average 5. FlyFare Fund grants supporting 39 grassroots transit justice projects. Executive bonuses across 4 major carriers, already adjusting downward for missed equity targets. Metrics aren't trophies, he concluded. They're checkpoints on a flight plan we adjust in real time. Standing ovation. Yet Jonah's focus stayed on the faces, not the clapping. He saw Claire wiping tears, Maria recording every cheer as validation for rule-making battles, Angela hugging her violin like a co-pilot. Cameras panned, hashtags bloomed. Altitude of dignity, young share the stack. Backstage, Claire approached, hands slightly trembling. Thank you for letting me stay visible, she said. Hiding never taught me anything. Jonah shook her hand. Accountability isn't exile, he replied. It's a round-trip ticket if you choose the return flight. Later, as Memphis neon flickered against civil rights murals, Jonah uploaded the summit's slide deck to the open repository. One last notification pinged: an email from a railway CEO accepting the Share the Stack license and attaching their first bias report. He filed it in a cloud folder named Evidence of Altitude. Outside, the night smelled of magnolia and fresh rain. Jonah exhaled, feeling the stitched-together uniform settle once more, lighter, now shared by thousands. He envisioned a new graph, already taking shape somewhere, not a curve down or up, but a line forward, steady, unwavering, charting the course of respect in motion.